Welcome to the Lubbock or Leave It podcast, a recruiting podcast on RedRiverSports.com. I'm Matt Clare, joined as always by Ben Golan. First, we want to thank Carnley Properties. If you're in the Austin metro, the city, the suburbs, ranchland, farmland, anywhere in that area, Clayton and his team can get you guys taken care of. Longtime poster on Red Raider Sports, Red Raiders helping other Red Raiders. What could be better than that? Especially here going into the football season where, Ben, it is personal. So we will post Clayton and Carnley Properties information here below this video, and please give them a holler. And we thank them for sponsoring the pod. Ben, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, you mentioned that it is personal. That's the new rally mantra for this year. So, it is personal. I'm excited to get going here in 17 days.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. It's the light is at the end of the tunnel. You got to, I definitely have a little more pep in my step. We've got pro and college coming around. Got little man and flag football. So it's football right now. And that's what we love. So, so much so to where we've both been out to some high school campuses recently. We touched on it last week when I went to see Travell Johnson, one of the linebacker targets, current Texas commit. We'll see how it goes, but you were actually able to see a Texas Tech commitment at his scrimmage last week, Huck Graham. If you want to tell us a little bit more about that, Ben.
Yeah, we try to go see all the recruits, obviously, in the area. And I noticed that Gunter, that's who Hutt Graham plays for, they were playing a scrimmage here down the road in Frisco, about 10 minutes from my house. So it was a perfect chance to go see them. And, overall, Hutt Graham was very impressive. This wasn't really a game. I mean, they played against Legacy Christian, and I think the final score was 41-0, and that was even closer than what it actually was. But anytime you go see these Power Five commits, you want to see your guy kind of stand out above the rest and just really look like a dude. And it was obvious that Hutt Graham, he got into the game at quarterback, and they, like I posted in the article, scored a touchdown every single drive he was in at quarterback. And then he also played 2 series at corner, which, I was interested in because that's what he'll be playing safety at Tech. So not a whole lot of action there. But just very impressive. He's fast. He's quick. He's strong. They couldn't tackle him. He was a leader out there, hyping the whole sideline up. You see him talking to the defense when he's on the sideline, just all these different things that you want from a leader. And he had great things to say about Tech. Wanting to come up for games, getting with the other commitments in the group chat. So just overall, I was very impressed by Hutt, and Gunter's a 20-minute drive, so I'm sure we'll be up there again.
Yeah, I know we've referenced it a couple of times, but you and I had gone specifically to see Baron Morton last year at the state championship game, and that's where we were introduced to Hutt. And regardless of what happened that night, I mean, you touched on something, just the leadership and kind of that fiery nature. I mean, that's a personality trait, right? That's not something that you pick up over time or that you wake up with. And so I think having that just sort of, I mean, for lack of a scientific term, just kind of wild ass on your defense at safety. I mean, you could list a lot of different guys, but, Hutt Graham's pretty unique. And I think, given time to develop, I think the athleticism's there. And regardless of whether it's a scrimmage, like you said, versus a private school or the 3A competition, I mean, the kid just has it. And I think another thing that you said that rings true is, when you're going to see these kids, they need to stand out, right? I mean, all the offer lists, all that's great. The commitments, all that's great. But again, I mean, Aaron and Chris have talked about it a long time. A jag, just a guy, that happens in the recruiting world too. And with the transfer portal, I mean, you see a lot of fight or flight, if you will, with more flight these days. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to go out and see these guys. I mean, albeit a scrimmage, like you said, we've got audio from that. You've got posts on our social media, and I want to give props to the guys that are new on staff that are covering the practices and some of the post practice interviews and media availability with the coaches. I mean, I think we're doing more picture wise and getting a little bit closer in practice than ever before. I mean, we're not roped off in the corner. So I don't know, Ben, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, shout out Mark Moore and Chase Seabold. They've been killing it. For us here in DFW, we're not out practice, so even
Right.
even for me, it's just cool to see the videos of the quarterbacks throwing or whatever it is, because I only have a mental image of what's happening, but it's good to actually see it play out like that on the
Yeah.
videos. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, I think everybody knows about Red Raider Sports on Twitter, but RS underscore rivals on Instagram. The guys are it. We are obviously, we want folks to come and be members at Red Raider Sports, but those guys can leave practice, upload photos, get those online, and then post them to the site as well. And so, give those a follow. I think you're getting access that you really haven't had in the past in terms of, I mean, they're right in the middle of drills, Ben. I mean, we haven't had that before. So that's pretty awesome. I just want to give those guys a shout out because they're really crushing it and hitting the ground running. But Ben, we touched on Hut Graham. We touched on football around the corner. Last time I said I wanted to talk about guys from this 2021 class that we could see suited up in between the stripes on Saturdays. And, just as a refresher to the folks listening to this, there's a rule where if you play a total of 4 games or whatever that is, 16 quarters, right? For all you math majors out there, and you can keep your eligibility, right? You don't have to burn your red shirt or anything like that. So traditionally, we've seen some of that. I mean, guys that come to mind from last year: Miles Price, Caleb Rogers, Philip Bleedy, maybe a few other guys, right, that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But those guys, I mean, some of those that I mentioned went on to burn their red shirt, and were needed and required. But you look at it in a couple of different ways. And now Matt Wells is in year 3. We've covered extensively, the transfers and the folks that he's brought in to as he says, get the roster older, more experienced. But you start to see a balance, right? Where, maybe it's a good thing that you don't need some of these 2021 guys to step in and play right away. Because if you look at some of the crown jewels, it would be easy for us to name off some of these players as obvious choices. But Ben, I guess with that table setter, let's talk about the 2021 class and maybe who are a couple of guys you expect to see on the field, maybe in that limited capacity or even more.
yeah, I think the obvious ones are on offense. Just looking at the depth chart and how the guys, how it lines up and who's kind of ready to come in and contribute. You never want to play your freshman offensive lineman or defensive lineman. Those guys need to bulk up, gain weight, do all these things. But at tight end, I think you see, Mason Tharp, you're hearing a lot from him, and then Judd Castles. I think Jerron Bradley, he's in the mix, with a handful of other receivers. I believe the tight ends will play, maybe more consistently. And then, Cameron Valdez, he's probably the 5th running back right now. You have 4 veterans ahead of him, but I could see him doing the 4 game and then red shirt rule, in my opinion. After that, it'd be a guessing game. I'm not sure. Maybe due to Banks, he has the size to play right away. But real quick, I know you mentioned the
Sure.
2020, all those guys who played like Miles Price and Caleb Rogers. Well, because of COVID, they didn't even burn their red shirts, so they could, they still have all their years left, which is another kind of good thing for Tech there.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I mentioned like watching Hard Knocks and stuff like that, and Micah Parsons begging to get back on the field, but obviously you're not going to play somebody like that in a meaningless game. And the same goes for somebody like a Cam Valdez. You're not going to just throw him out there for the entire second half of the SFA just because. But then I don't know, as we talked about it, kind of made me think like you recruit these guys, recruit them, come to Tech, come to Tech. I mean, a guy like Cameron had a ton of offers. You look at Barron Morton, you look at Jaron Bradley, right? You want to get them involved as much as possible. So again, I don't have an answer for that. I'm kind of, that's a responsibility of a coach that they have to carry that balance. But you pretty much touched on all the guys. One guy I would add in terms of just maybe getting on the field and doing something, Charles Esters to me has looked pretty good in how he's prepared and added weight and come to campus ready to play. You touched on Marion Banks. He looks gigantic. I mean, this is a young man that had all the offers, had an injury after, I think it was first or second week of the playoffs of his junior season. and he was kind of slowly brought back during the senior year, and he was committed. So I don't know, from that aspect, how hard he went or how healthy he was, but he looks like he's added at least 20 to 30 pounds, from either official roster or some of these videos that we mentioned from the team. So that's a guy, similar to Bleedy last year, where, let's be honest, neither of us expected to see Bleedy out there at defensive end. So I think we could easily see Banks out there. I mean, I've talked about Tharp for months on end. He's my pick to click, whatever you want to call it, right? I've seen him in person. He's the real deal. He's over 6 foot. He's over 6'8", and
6'9" listed on the Tech roster. He's 6'9".
Right. When we met, I think he told me something like 6'9.5", and I was like, "Well, I can't put a half size. You want me to do 6'9"?" And he's like, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I just didn't want to mess with the profile, because after 6'7", 6'8", I mean, what are we doing here, right? But I've seen him play multiple times. He can move with all that size. I mean, he's fast, he's quick. He works with Rashad Whitfield in Houston, and that guy works with several college guys, several NFL guys, and he holds his own out there. And if you see Rashad on social media, he thinks that Tharp is the truth. And so I think these are the guys that Tech has to focus on, those solid 3-star guys that love Tech, that can come in and make that impact. And so anyway, I said I've already talked about him enough, so I'll stop. But you'll definitely see Tharp. I think you'll see some of Castle's. I mean, Jerron Bradley's out there running with the 1s and 2s already. He was an early enrollee, so I think it makes sense. You'll see a lot of him. I guess as I thought about it, Ben, a year ago, you look at the quarterback room, and we've talked about this a couple of times. I ultimately don't expect to see Morton, just because you've got Shuck, Columbi, and then you still have McIver on the roster, but then of course Smith is now healthy. And so in terms of seniority or waiting your turn, unless he's just tearing it up right now, I think it's best, the coaches continue to develop, put some size on him, and just let him get that, a little bit of experience. I mean, like I said, there's only so much time in the game. So if that's an SFA or one of these other games, then so be it. But, more to my intro, I think that's it. Right. I mean, maybe like a Tucker or Jacoby Jackson get some snaps, but at the end of the day, when we look on PFF, I mean, I think they're going to be very small amounts, albeit great experience, but we're not talking 4 games and not burn a red shirt type of playing time.
Yeah. I think just, to your point, it's just newcomers that, fans are excited about. They've never seen this guy outside of his high school tape. What is he going to bring to Texas Tech? Because these are 2 totally different things. And so, when I think of newcomers, I'm also considering guys in the 2020 class who didn't play, like a JJ Sparkman. He might as well be a true freshman. We've never seen him play at Tech. Another guy who is in that same mold is LB Moore, who, in the spring game, Matt Wells said he was one of the best, spring players. Kobe Minor and Nate Floyd have been getting a lot of social media posts about them, hype here and there. So, I mean, these are all guys we haven't seen. And to me, they're just as exciting as, any true freshman, just because you haven't seen them play.
I mean, we probably just talked about at least 8 to 10 guys. And then you wrote a column earlier in the week. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're somehow listening to it through social media, join us at Red Raider Sports. Right now, there's not a better time. Football is about to kick off. Me and Ben cover recruiting like no other website out there when it comes to Texas Tech. And then, like we mentioned, we've got guys, boots on the ground at practice. And of course, you got Level and AD wrapping it up. There's plenty of other guys I could mention. We've got a strong staff right now. Definitely check it out. Ben, what I meant by that is you covered like some of the newcomers, some of the guys that you thought could click. And where I'm getting at that is, I mean, you could literally be sitting at a Tech game and some of these, longtime fans could have to scroll the program and be like, okay, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Because between the 8 to 10 guys we just mentioned, 9 transfers, other guys that maybe played sparingly and they're going to take a bigger role. I mean, you're going to have a lot of, a pretty big mix of experience and inexperience, but like old and young. And I mean, to me, that's more exciting than it is concerning, because you either have an answer at quarterback or you don't. Right. Yeah. But then the rest of it, you're even mentioning defensive backs that we really haven't seen a lot of. Those guys could take a next step and really do something this season. And I think that's where I kind of lean more towards exciting than concerned.
Yeah. And Mark Moore, who was one of the who's at practice and has been posted his, DB depth chart tonight. And, both Kobe Minor and Nate Floyd were on there. So that's why I thought it was worth shouting them out. I think yesterday, Keith Patterson said there are 6 corners that he can trust. He said that, in his presser availability. So, I don't have that, list in front of me. I don't know who he's referencing, but you kind of assume based on who's on scholarship, who's where, that those 2 guys could be on that list. And just hearing that is kind of exciting. When was the last time Tech had 6 corners you felt good about?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, even just hearing that comment, it's mind blowing, right? But that's why you build depth. That's why you create competition. And this is the you hope that that's the end result is success and depth at the position. But I would argue, it's not argue, it's a bad term, but I would also point out that, 2 weeks away, while you have 6 guys, you're going to start to probably see from, the guys' coverage that, okay, these guys are starting to separate themselves and these guys are getting more play with the ones, et cetera, et cetera. These are the first set of linebackers. This is what the secondary is looking like, so on and so forth. There's a lot of knowns, but I think as we get closer to that first game of the season, I think both practice coverage and just general media availability will tell us a lot. I mean, I guess we can kind of wrap it at that, Ben. We've seen around college football, we've seen a lot of starting quarterbacks getting named. There's sort of this just assumed nature around Lubbock that Tyler Shuck's the guy, and probably for good reason. We have not seen that announcement. And I don't know if that's really ever been Wells' style, right? When he got to town, it was all about Bowman. And in hindsight, that's banana land, right? All due respect to Allen, just with the way things played out, right? But, you have that mindset going in and you think you've got a guy, but we haven't seen that announcement. So do you think that that's on the horizon, or kind of what vibes do you get, following all this stuff?
Yeah, I just, the second scrimmage is coming up on Saturday. I don't see why, I think internally they probably do know it's Shuck. This is just a guess, nothing, I've
Sure.
heard, but I think they want to go into that second scrimmage. They'll see how that goes, and then probably name a starter early next week is what I'm expecting, because you want to do that for the team. They know who their leader is. They know who they can gravitate to. All these different things, and I thought it was interesting. I just mentioned Keith Patterson's presser yesterday. Well, Sonny Cumby also did one, and if you listen to that one, the last question of the presser, I don't know who asked it, but it was asking about the quarterback competition. And just, hearing Cumby, just talk about Shuck, how he's, been a natural leader. He's staying late after practice, doing all these different things. It just sounds from his tone that, maybe that's who he's leaning towards. But that's just my interpretation of that also. So,
Well, sure.
I
And
guess we'll see.
in terms of following breadcrumbs, tea leaves, and all that, typically, if you're going to kid from, Arizona, from Oregon, et cetera, taking a trip to DFW, linking up with Zombieland and all those contacts through Izukama, Price, all those guys who came up in that scene that you and I covered for so many years. That's not done by accident, right? Everybody applauds Tom Brady for throwing to his receivers in the offseason, Brett Favre for bringing everybody to the old high school in Mississippi, right? Those are leadership traits. Those are things that end up happening, right, when you have a guy. So I think it's fair to make those assumptions, but I don't know. I just thought it was odd that, it hasn't been announced or anything like that, but not the end of the world either, right? So I think there you have it, man. Not a ton of recruiting for us to talk about per se. We are getting back on the road. I think you and I will see Marion Horn, who is, for those that don't know, Broken Arrow High School athlete, but plays both sides of the ball. Just tremendously athletic, obviously. But being recruited as a defensive back at Texas Tech. But I really want to see him in person. So we're going to check him out versus Mansfield. And then, you and I still need to figure out the schedule, but we usually figure it out as we go. And then that was knock on wood that we don't have to wear like masks or get kicked out of covering games, because I'm pretty excited to finally watch some football.
You get kicked out of any games recently? Is that what you're saying here?
No, but last year it just seemed like Like, you remember that one game where we had to like fill out a form, answer all these ridiculous questions, and not even health
Yeah.
related. Like you literally had to like, it was like interviewing for a job, and then you like the very last minute, you either got to cover the game or didn't, or only one person from away. It was all weird. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, I remember going the first one I covered when I went to see Jed Castles. They wouldn't let me in because our media wasn't allowed because of COVID. So I said, hey, I'll tell you what, how do I buy a ticket? I'll just watch from the stands. And I had to download an app. I had to scan something because it was all paperless. And I respect all that, right? But then I just walked on the field. I mean,
Yeah.
I had some lady was like, hi, I'm the athletic director. Who are you? Oh, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Matt Clare. I write for Red River Sports and we're in the Rivals Network. I'm here to cover this young man. Oh, that's great. So
Yeah.
I mean, it just so many weird experiences last year. But the point is, I want to get out there and see these guys. The only thing I'm bummed about this week is I had to cancel my trip to Houston. Part of that was this afternoon, actually. If I had gotten there on time, I was going to go over to A-Leaf Taylor and see Tyler King. But we'll make that happen. My day job is corporate space in Houston, so I'll be down there. I'll try to see those guys. We've got another commitment in Oklahoma, and then several other guys here in the Texas area. So you and I will get around to those. Ben, any other thoughts? Anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up?
Not related to recruiting or tech really, but today, Madden 22 comes out in 2 days. They made a post. They said, if you retweet this post and comment a GIF, we'll send you a code. You can win a code. So they DM me. They said, what console? So they gave me a code for Madden 22. So I have that now. And so if anyone watching wants to lose, hit me up on Xbox,
I
and
mean,
you
this
you will
guy.
you will lose in Madden.
You
Guaranteed.
when we were at that event and they were talking about like being verified on Twitter or whatever, you'd have thought Ben melted in his chair. Like he is verified on Twitter. Madden's reaching out to him on social
That's
media. I mean,
right.
guys, this is the definition of a humble brag. And on that note, we will end the podcast. I am not verified, but follow me, Matt Clare Rivals, Ben Golan on Twitter. We'll keep you guys up to date. As always, thank you to Carnley Properties and Clayton and his team. Will post that info here below. Any real estate needs in the greater Austin metro area, please give them a holler. And we appreciate the sponsorship. Guys, have a good one. 2 weeks away. I don't know what we'll talk about over those next 2 weeks, but we'll make it happen, Ben. Have a good one.